Welcome to the All Things Nintendo podcast. I'm Brian Shea, and this is a weekly podcast to discuss all the biggest news and games from the world of Nintendo. We have a brand new release to discuss, and that is what most of this episode is going to be about. That game is Shinobi Art of Vengeance. It's the latest game from Lizard Cube and Sega, and quite frankly, it is a game that I have played and love a lot. So I'm theming the majority of this episode around that release. But first off, it is just going to be me, and we've got a couple of quick news stories to cover before we transition to the meat of this episode, which will be two distinct conversations about Shinobi Art of Vengeance. First up, I will be joined by Inverse's Hayes Madsen, who will be discussing his review and basically comparing it to my review. He reviewed it for Inverse, and I reviewed it for Game Informer. And then on the tail end, we have a very special treat as the man who is responsible for the theme song that you just heard, but is also responsible for soundtracks for games such as Sonic Mania, TMNT Shredder's Revenge, Penny's Big Breakaway, and a lot more, including Shinobi Art of Vengeance. Tee Lopes, one of the best working composers in the games industry currently, is going to be joining the show at the tail end of this episode. But like I mentioned, first off, it's just going to be me. We are going to be running down a couple of quick news stories. Not the biggest news week in the world of Nintendo here, but we do have a couple of things to discuss. And, the first thing that I did want to bring up is, like, Nintendo it really did feel like they were setting the table for a Nintendo Direct. We normally get it late June, early July, as I've mentioned the past couple of episodes. We did not get that. We are now about to cross the threshold into September with still no Nintendo Direct, no proper first-party Nintendo Direct. And sometimes Nintendo does do it around PAX West, but usually those are like game-specific things. Like a couple years ago, they did a Mario Wonder specific Nintendo Direct, and that does not seem to be the case this year, because PAX West is happening this weekend, and that is apparently, we would have heard of something by now, I feel like, if they were going to do that. So that does not seem like that is going to be the case, but that leaves us wondering, when are we going to find out more about Metroid Prime 4 Beyond? And honestly, I'm starting to get slightly worried that it is going to be delayed out of 2025, because if you look at Nintendo, they typically like to do like one release a month, one big release a month. And we're starting to run out of months real quick. I would be very surprised. We don't really have like a big Nintendo release in September, I don't think. But was Kirby Air Riders? No, Kirby Air Riders is October. Pokemon, let's see here. So Kirby Air Riders is October, right? No, that's November. I'm sorry. Pokemon is October. And so that leaves September and December for Metroid Prime. And it's not unheard of that we would get a big Nintendo release in December, although big releases in December are typically pretty rare. But Nintendo has done it in the past. We got one of the Xenoblade games, I believe, in December one year, and I know we got Smash Ultimate in December when that came out. But it's starting to worry me a little bit, I'll be honest with you. And I don't know if Nintendo is going to do another Direct soon, but like if they're going to announce a Metroid Prime 4 release date, it's got to be soon. But if you're on Spotify or YouTube and you're listening to or watching this, there are comment functionalities on these episodes. That's a new thing that Spotify, somewhat new, that Spotify implemented, and YouTube's obviously always had comments. I'm curious what everyone is thinking is going to happen with Metroid Prime 4, because I was confident that we were going to get it in November, and then they announced Kirby Air Riders is November. So I'm starting to wonder / worry if it's December or later, because it would be, again, shocking that we haven't heard anything more on Metroid Prime 4. And I doubt that September is going to be the release date, because that's just no runway whatsoever. But yeah, we're still on Nintendo Direct watch, so it's been kind of a slow news week outside of the release of Shinobi Art of Vengeance. But I did have two that I wanted to shout out here. We'll start with this one because it makes the most sense given that it's a follow up from last week's stories. But we recently learned that September 4th is when Hollow Knight Silksong is coming out. So, less than a week by the time you're listening to this episode. And it turns out that has signaled a seismic shift in the indie game space in particular. There were several games that were scheduled to launch in early to mid September that have basically acted like this is Grand Theft Auto releasing, because they have cleared the way for Hollow Knight to really just have a clear landing strip for their release. They wanted to clear themselves out of the blast radius. Multiple games have been delayed out of the early to mid September timeframe, and several of them have said outright this is to avoid Hollow Knight Silksong, and it's a wild occurrence. And I'm going to run down some of those. So, Baby Steps was one that I think that a lot of us are looking forward to. It's kind of like a zany, like walking simulator, it looks like, and it's from Bennett Foddy, who was responsible for games like Ape Out and Getting Over It, which is a very, very popular game as well. And it was originally going to be coming out September 8th, and now it is September 23rd. And the quote said that, let's see, where is the quote? Okay, it's not in the, sorry, I'm reading this over on Game Informer, and there's, okay, so Nate, the wary onesie-donned fail-son at the heart of the eccentric adventure in literal walking simulator Baby Steps, has stumbled after attempting to ascend his greatest challenge yet, launching the week after Hollow Knight Silksong's surprise release date. So that is basically them confirming that this is because they wanted to clear the way for Hollow Knight Silksong. Demon School is another one that's almost like Shin Megami Tensei and Persona inspired RPG. That also was delayed from September 3rd to November 19th. They did cite that they wanted to polish the game a little bit before the full release, but they also said Hollow Knight Silksong was part of that decision-making process as well. We also got Eterna Lucas, which was supposed to come out this month. It is now delayed into next year. That's a Metroidvania-style game. There's Phaland, which was supposed to come out of launch out of early access September 9th. It has now been postponed to TBD. And Clover Pit, which is described by Marcus Stewart over on Game Informer as a roguelite slot machine game. That was originally going to come out September 3rd, and it is now September 26th. So apparently all of them saying that Hollow Knight Silksong played some part in their decision-making process. It is wild. The anticipation for Hollow Knight Silksong has obviously been at a fever pitch for a long time, and it's only gotten kind of more of a fervor surrounding this almost mythological game at this point. But I'm excited for Hollow Knight Silksong, and I think that it is a good idea not to get in its way, especially if you're an indie title. Like I think a game like NBA 2K26 or Borderlands 4 that are still slated to release in that first half of September, I think they're kind of a different target audience. So I understand why a lot of indies would want to abandon ship here. But it makes me wonder if these developers, and there's so many of them clearing out, are overreacting to the Hollow Knight effect. I think that Hollow Knight Silksong is going to be one of the biggest indie games of the year, but is it? I don't know if it's alter your entire release schedule big. Maybe I'm underestimating the impact here. I think that like it reached this level of almost becoming a meme, and that causes it to garner this extra attention. And yes, that means that it's probably very easy for some of these indie titles to be overshadowed. But I'm wondering if a game like Demon School, for example, which seems like it's part RPG, part visual novel, if that really has all that much overlap outside of it just being a fellow indie game. So much so, and yes, I know they said that they wanted to add polish to the game as well. but does it have such an overlap outside of just being a fellow indie title that they needed to delay it by 2.5 months? I don't know. And I guess the sales numbers will ultimately show out how impactful Hollow Knight is, and adjacent games that haven't cleared out. Like there's a few games that Marcus notes here, like Adventure of Samsara, Jet Runner, Hirogami, and Metal Eden, that are also indie or kind of like double A published releases. We'll see how those perform, and like if the reviews are good and if the sales kind of match what the reviews would have us expect. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how impactful Hollow Knight Silksong really is once it actually comes out. But for now, it's obviously super impactful because all these developers are clearing out of that time frame, and I guess we have a much less concentrated early September at this point, but it's still going to be an extremely busy first half of this month. And then the only other news story that I really wanted to cover in this episode before we throw to the main segments here is Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection, which is Digital Eclipse, which if you listen to this podcast for any amount of time, I'm a big fan of Digital Eclipse. It's the studio behind Atari 50 and several other of the compilations. They are putting out a Mortal Kombat collection that I am quite excited for. I can't imagine anything but an extremely high mark of quality from this studio, and Mortal Kombat being probably a top 10, top 15 franchise for me. I grew up on those games, playing them in the arcades. When my parents would allow me, I would either rent or buy them in certain cases. And of course, they only let me have the Game Gear one for a while. And that was because there was no blood. And then once I discovered there was a code to put blood in the game, that game was immediately taken away from me. I was, I think, in second grade when I discovered that code. So I was probably too young to be playing that game anyway. I did tell Ed Boon that story one time, and he told me to apologize to my parents on his behalf. But that is not what we are talking about. They announced the final roster of games for Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection. And we already knew the most of them, right? Like we knew Mortal Kombat, which has there are so many versions of these games. So there's for Mortal Kombat 1, there's the arcade, SNES, Genesis, Game Boy, and Game Gear version. So good. I can relive my childhood through the Game Gear version and try that blood unlock code one more time. Mortal Kombat 2, there's the arcade, SNES, Genesis, Game Boy, and 32X version. I'm excited for that. 32X games rarely get emulated, so that's fun. Mortal Kombat 3, there's the arcade, SNES, and Genesis version. Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, there's arcade, WaveNet arcade, and SNES. Mortal Kombat Trilogy, that's PlayStation. Mortal Kombat 4, which again, not a game that's commonly re-released. In fact, I would say out of all the mainline Mortal Kombat games, it's probably the most despised, if I can go that far. It's not a game that people tend to like, but it's cool that it's in this collection. Mortal Kombat Advance, the Game Boy Advance version of that. Obviously, that's all that existed. Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, the Game Boy Advance version. Mortal Kombat Tournament Edition on Game Boy Advance. And then the two new additions for this are Mortal Kombat Special Forces, which was a PlayStation 1 beat 'em up game that received some of the worst reviews. I think that was one of the earliest games that I remember hearing was just terrible. And like back in the 90s, there were a lot of like, oh, this game is bad, but you'd play them anyway. This was one of those games. This came out in 2000 that I remember hearing, just avoid this game because it's so terrible. And along those same lines is the other game that they announced during Gamescom, which is Mortal Kombat Mythologies Sub-Zero. Now, this is a game, if you haven't heard of it, if you're not familiar with it, they basically tried to translate the 2D fighting style of Mortal Kombat, including like the live action actors being scanned into the background or into the game with like the animated backgrounds, and like the digitized actors are in there and everything. But it's kind of like a side-scrolling beat 'em up meets a platformer, and it is a nightmare of a game. And it has live action cutscenes that have been memed pretty hard as well. But again, it's like Mortal Kombat 4 and Mortal Kombat Special Forces. It is a relic that is so rare to have the opportunity to play that I'm excited to check these games out, because I haven't played Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero since I went to a cousin's house who had all the Mortal Kombat games, and he had Mythology Sub-Zero, and I remember playing it and being like, this is terrible, but it's a cool piece of game preservation, because I don't know the last time this game was released aside from like the PlayStation. I think it was on PC at one point too, but like it's not something that's commonly available from what I understand. I can't remember any time that it's really been playable, but that's super cool that they're doing that. And I am all for having them alongside the mainstays, like, you know, Mortal Kombat 2's arcade version, or having the 32X version of Mortal Kombat 2, or Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 different versions. Like, these are all the mainstays that you need to have when you have a Mortal Kombat collection. And to add in the weirdness of like the Game Boy versions of these games, or Special Forces or Sub-Zero, that is what makes this a more compelling package, beyond just like, okay, well, here's re-release versions of these games that you've played a lot of, and they're already available in so many different ways. So, and I'm assuming that Legacy Collection is still going to have like all the bells and whistles. I think that it does have like a little bit of like the historical perspective, so it's like kind of an interactive museum, the same way that they did with Atari 50 and Tetris Forever. So very excited for that. It is coming to Switch 2, Switch, and every other major platform a little bit later this year. So that's all the news that I wanted to cover here. And we're going to throw to the two subsequent conversations that I'm going to have with Hayes Madsen of Inverse and game composer Tee Lopes, who worked on Shinobi Art of Vengeance, as well as the theme song of this very podcast and several other acclaimed games. But before we take this first break, just a reminder that you're listening to the All Things Nintendo podcast. This show arrives in your podcast feeds completely free each and every Friday. But if you would like to support me and allow me to keep on making these episodes, you can join my Patreon page for as little as $3 a month. That price gets you access to the community Discord, which gives everybody priority access to Q&A episodes. But there are also $5 and $10 tiers that get you access to early and ad-free episodes, plus shout-outs at the end of each and every show. Just go to patreon.com and search All Things Nintendo. It would really help the show out if you are able to join. Otherwise, you can seek out my YouTube channel, which is a completely free way to support the show. Subscribe to that if you would be so kind. But we are going to take our first break of this episode, and when we get back, I will be joined by Hayes Madsen from Inverse to talk about our reviews of Shinobi Art of Vengeance. We will be right back. We are back, and this week we actually got a new release that ranks up there among my favorite games of 2025. It is Shinobi Art of Vengeance. It is the latest game from Lizard Cube, behind Streets of Rage 4 and the Wonder Boy revival, and also a joint development effort with Sega. And I reviewed it for Game Informer, and my guest on this segment reviewed it for Inverse. It is Hayes Madsen. Hayes, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. Excited to talk about a very good game.
Yes. So I got to play this, I want to say back in April or May. I spent a day in Sega of America, the Sonic team specifically, and checking out several of their upcoming games. And, you know, Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, the Demon Slayer game that's coming out. But Shinobi Art of Vengeance was the one that I came away thinking like, wow, this one has a chance to be something special. Lizard Cube has a really great portfolio, even though it's a pretty short one. And, you know, for people who aren't familiar, Lizard Cube has done a lot of Sega revival work, like I mentioned, Streets of Rage 4, Wonder Boy. But this is the first time that they're actually co-developing a game with Sega. They were licensed for Sega, but like, you know, Dotemu published Streets of Rage 4. Sega is not only publishing Shinobi Art of Vengeance, but co-developing it. So, Hayes, what is your experience with the Shinobi franchise before this?
It's actually very little. I have played a few of the games. I played the original Shinobi, and I played the two PS2 games. I think it was the first one was just called Shinobi. I don't remember what the second one was called. And then I've dabbled a little bit in some of the classics here and there, but it was not a series that I like grew up with or
Hmm.
anything.
Well, it's really been dormant for a long, long
Long
time. Like
time.
the last time we
Yeah.
got a proper Shinobi game was on 3DS. So that tells you,
Hmm.
like, it skipped two entire Nintendo generations. We got the 3DS version, nothing on Wii U, nothing on Switch, and here we are. I mean, I guess this is on Switch, but we already have a new Nintendo console out. And really, I think that this shows not only like Sega at the top of their game, but Lizard Cube absolutely. This is the best thing Lizard Cube has put out.
Oh, by
Um,
far. Yeah.
I mean, Streets of Rage 4 is fantastic. Don't get me wrong, but Shinobi Art of Vengeance, it's the best gameplay they've ever done, and I think it's the best art they've ever done. Which, really, in talking to Ben, the studio head over there, he got into games because he wanted to create good looking video games. He saw like
Hmm.
the Aladdin and Lion King Genesis games and was like, oh wow, like we could make something. I want to make games that look even cooler than this, and he really accomplished that with Shinobi Art of Vengeance. I think this is one of the best looking games I may have ever played.
Yeah. I put in my review, like, the only thing I can think to compare to this on kind of a visual level is Vanillaware stuff,
Yeah,
like Muramasa or 13 Sentinels. It just has that pop off the screen kind of feel where it's just so silky smooth and animations are, and there's so many different like rich animations for combat and traversal and everything.
yeah, and it all complements those various elements that you're talking about so well. Like I on the Game Informer show this week, I brought up like I keep bouncing back and forth between what is the best, like the most perfect area of this game. It's between the visuals and the level design for me.
Hmm.
I think the level design, save for maybe one level in the game, which we're not going to spoil too much about this game, but like there is a level later on where I'm just like, okay, not a big fan of this level, but those segments are few and far between, right? Like the
Yeah.
levels are so flawlessly like, okay, well, this is obviously the main path, and then if you want to do exploration off to the side, it's almost like a linear Metroidvania in a lot of
Yeah.
ways.
It's really good about that too, because like I love Metroidvanias, but a lot of my problems with some of them is that it's very easy to get lost. And this is not that case because it has a lot of subtle cues on the map. So like, I've eventually realized that optional areas kind of have this purple tinge to them or
Hmm.
this orange tinge, and all the mainline paths are green. So you can kind of intuit where the optional stuff and the secret stuff is, but it's all done very seamlessly, I would say.
Yeah, they do a fantastic job of just spelling out where is somewhere important to go. And I feel like every area, despite like relying on the same core tenets of like, all right, this is either a precision platforming section, an exploration section, or a combat arena, they all feel distinct enough that I wasn't like, okay, here we go again, more enemies to fight. Like they I feel like every single encounter was handcrafted in a way that makes it so that it was exciting and it kept you on your toes every single time. Even though it is often the same combination of enemies, it's either like, okay, well, here's like a different like arena shape, or like
Hmm.
here's a different combination of enemies in this one wave. So like,
Yeah.
suddenly you have like the floating ghost horse heads or whatever, and then like you're fighting against like the ghost samurai that you fought in the very first level, only now it's a regular enemy. And like it's just like you have to approach it almost like a puzzle game, but also approach it like a fighting game with the combinations that you have to pull off.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say level design is your favorite part because I actually genuinely think the combat is my favorite
It's
part
so
of this
good.
game. Because like you said, it is a 2D platformer, but it has these like really complex combo systems that are very similar to a fighting game. And as you go through and get money, you unlock new combos, and the way you can string those together is so satisfying. And that's before you even talk about like the execution mechanic, where if you stagger an enemy and raise their gauge, like you can do this instant execution that always feels so good to pull off.
God, there's been so many times where I was like at the end of my life bar and I landed like the heavy attack, or I threw a kunai at the enemy and they had the little like execution symbol above their head, and you push both, I think it's both shoulder buttons to pull
Yeah.
it off, and just seeing him jump into like that execution animation, and then like you see some health orbs drop, you're like, oh thank God. Like it is so satisfying because like you attack the enemy who's like either staggered or low on health, and they explode like a piñata, and then like you get like either money or rage gauge, which allows you to pull off an ultimate, or it gives you health, which is a very precious resource in a lot of these
Hmm.
levels, even though the checkpointing I think is done very well. Like
Yeah,
it's
pretty
very
well. Yeah.
rare that like I would die and be like, oh, now I have like this long sequence to go through again that I don't want to play, or like I have just a lot of like time that I have to kind of like retrace my steps again. It's usually like, oh, I died, but like now I just have to start the encounter over primarily.
And it's funny because I think it's the mark of a very well designed game when I consistently found myself in those like split second situations where there was one hit left, and I but
Hmm.
I still managed to beat the boss. And like I consistently every hour would find that kind of combat encounter where but I still won. And it just is so satisfying that you can string along those kind of experiences throughout this game.
Absolutely. What were your so one of the things that you can do in Ninja Gaiden, or Ninja Gaiden, sorry, I also wrote the Ninja Gaiden 4 cover story that is currently on Game Informer.
A lot
So
of ninjas right
I'm
now.
talking a lot about ninja stuff lately. For Shinobi Art of Vengeance is that you can like customize your loadout. So as you do exploration, you find these Oboro relics which allow you to expand your shop, and within the shop you can buy new combos, you can buy new moves, you can buy these different like ninpo abilities that let you like perform like elemental attacks a lot of the time, or like summon something to attack for you. Those are actually extremely powerful. And then
Hmm.
there's the ninjutsu attacks that give you like kind of like an ultimate ability. And what you can do is like not only can you like add amulets to your character to like add like active and passive things, it also allows you to like choose what buttons you want to push for these ninpo abilities, and that gives you like customization based on what you want to like do to like approach your combat encounters. I relied a lot on the fireball,
Yeah.
and I liked the kind of like boomerang shuriken that you can throw.
Yeah,
Like,
that's good. Yeah, I like the water counter a lot
yeah,
too,
it's like a parry
especially for
almost.
like bosses. It worked really well with some bosses.
Oh, I didn't use it on any bosses. That's a good one.
Mm.
The ninjutsu ultimates that you can unlock, I liked the kind of like screen clearing, like almost like a
The fire
dragon.
dragon one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the one I ended up relying on the most was the one that heals you.
Yeah.
That one, I would get down to like the end of a boss encounter. I'd have like a sliver of health left, and then I'd use that and I'd be like, oh God, I can
Oh
exhale
yeah,
now.
it's super useful. Yeah.
Yeah. So with the combat encounters, like I love that like the flow of the game going from exploration to platforming to just taking on various enemies in like kind of like this thing where they spawn in waves. It all feels super intuitive, super fluid. But I really looked forward to like the more challenging encounters. So there's the E&E Corps like
Hmm.
elite squads, and
Oh,
then
those are
there's
so good.
the
Yeah.
Anku rifts are also super good if you encountered a lot of those. So yeah, the elite squadron. Let's start with those. Those are just kind of like these optional encounters. There's like a little like mask that appears on the map, and you can just walk right past it if you want. Like if you're
Hmm.
low on health and like you want to come back to it, you can do that, or you can just take it on right then and there, and it spawns in I think it's 3 waves of enemies for each of the elite squads, and like it's always like higher level enemies, especially near the end, like enemies with like multiple life bars. So it's almost like mini bosses, but they're like mini boss variants of enemies that you fight throughout the normal stages. And I don't know about you, but normally I'm like in games like this where it's like, all right, elite challenges, like I'm like, I guess I'll do
Yeah, I
it
usually
because like it's a
skip a
good
lot of it.
reward. But like when I get down to it, I'm like, especially near like the end of like a review game, I'm like, all right, I get it. Like I understand what those are conceptually. I can skip this and like golden path it towards the end. This, I don't know if willingly skipped a single one. Like there were some that I missed because I just
Yeah.
didn't explore like a little corner of the map or something. But I was super excited every time I had that or the Anku rifts, which were just like, again, similar, like challenging combat encounter, or sometimes they were like challenging platform sequence.
Hmm. I was the same way, but I think what's interesting is that the game makes it very easy to like go back and do stuff that you've missed. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you go back to previous levels, you can fast travel to like any of the checkpoints on the map. You don't have to like redo the whole level. So if you want to come back later and like do those extra challenging battles when you have a few more combos, you can do that. And I actually did find myself going back to almost every level to do everything that I missed because I just enjoyed the experience of that combat so much.
Yeah, it truly is like an incredibly designed game. And I think that like it shows that like I said this in my review and I said it on the Game Informer show, but like it kind of walks this tightrope of like this is this long dormant franchise. Fans who remember it from back then have like a set of expectations for what a Shinobi game should be, and people who have never played a Shinobi game need to have some sort of approachable on ramp, and it needs to keep up with like modern day game design conventions. And I think this flawlessly does that. Like it
Hmm.
doesn't feel out of line as a Shinobi game, but it also feels like this is an elite action platformer that doles out these abilities in incredibly efficient but also like perfectly eased into ways, and you never feel overwhelmed by the number of abilities you have at your disposal, and you can customize it however you want. The platforming is so precise and like it feels extremely tight, as does the combat. But like if you said like if somebody played the Shinobi games back on Genesis and then never played a video game again, but those were their favorite games, they have fond memories of it, and then you told them, hey, there's a new Shinobi game, do you want to check it out? And they're like, oh, I used to love those games, and they picked this up and played it, I think they would be like, oh yeah, this does seem like
I agree. Yeah.
how this would feel 30 years later.
Yeah. It does a really good job of mixing things up with like big set pieces too. Like two of my favorite levels are honestly the like side scrolling levels where you ride the wolf, the giant wolf, and then you skate on a shield on the ocean.
Yeah.
And it's just these really cool, like high speed, high intensity chase sequences almost.
Yeah, the,
And
the
there's
bonus
little,
stages.
yeah, there's little set pieces mixed in between levels too. Uh, I just think the variety here is astounding, honestly.
It really is just, I mean, I said it earlier. This is probably my front runner for my game of the year currently. And, I like Clair Obscur quite a bit. I still haven't finished it. I know. But like, Donkey Kong Bonanza, I loved that game. That is up there with my favorite games of 2025 as well. That was my game of
Hmm.
the year front runner before I played Shinobi Art of Vengeance. But this game, I went in with high expectations and they still somehow exceeded them.
Yeah, it's definitely in my top three, like you with literally Clair Obscur and Donkey Kong. Those my top three right there.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I think it's been a sneaky good year for games so far, and we
Yeah,
have a lot on the horizon. How do you feel about like this like ninja renaissance that we're having right now? We had Ninja Gaiden Black 2 at the start of the
yeah.
year, which was the first Ninja Gaiden release since 2014. We had Assassin's Creed Shadows. We
Hmm.
had Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, which I don't know about you, but I played that. That was also fantastic.
100%. Yeah, I actually wrote an article that I think it's actually really fun if you play this Shinobi and Ninja Gaiden Ragebound at the same time
Oh
because
wow.
I think they're very like not literally at the same time, but you kind of go back and forth. I think they're very complementary of each other in terms
Yes.
of like Ragebound's focus on split second reactions versus Shinobi's kind of fighting game focus, and they really kind of feed into each other in some interesting ways.
I did jump straight from Ragebound to Shinobi, so I will back you up on that. I don't know how well the mechanics would like mesh in my brain of like me being able to separate it. Be like, okay, well now I can use what I forget the secondary protagonist, but like her move set
Oh
in,
yeah, yeah.
I feel like I would get some wires crossed if I was trying to play these games simultaneously. But maybe somebody who isn't as old and decrepit as me would be able to separate those in their brain.
I know the feeling.
But yeah, and then Ninja Gaiden 4 is kind of rounding out
It's
what
October, right?
yeah, October 20th, I believe. And as I mentioned, I wrote the cover story for that. I got to travel to Platinum Games, which was super awesome. You know, the pedigree
Exciting,
of that
yeah.
studio, having, you know, games like Astral Chain, Near Automata, uh,
Vanquish.
the Bayonetta franchise, like, you know, such a storied studio. And to be able to spend a full day in there playing Ninja Gaiden 4, talking to members of Team Ninja and Platinum Games, and really diving deep into how that game came to be from both of their perspectives was really, really fun. And also, you know, diving into the core mechanics of that. It's not currently slated to come to Switch 2, but I would be surprised if it doesn't. I mean, the Master Collection is on Switch 2,
Yeah, yeah. It would
which
be a
is
good
the
game on Switch too.
it
Yeah.
really would be. As is Ragebound. Ragebound is also on Switch. So I would not be surprised if Ninja Gaiden 4 does come. And if it does, we will talk about it then. But
Hmm.
Hayes, the last thing I want to talk to you about before we let you go and we move on to the final segment of this episode, Sega has kind of planted its flag in the ground saying, we are going to be doing a bunch of retro revivals, right? Like it's going to be like, we're going to revive Jet Set Radio. We're going to revive Crazy Taxi. And I think Golden Axe is on there.
Yeah, that's on there.
Shinobi is the first one of that initiative, even though, you know, we got Super Monkey Ball a couple of, 2 years ago,
Hmm.
which I feel like should have been maybe the first in that revival series.
Virtua Fighter, I guess you could kind of put in there too.
Yeah, so we have a lot of revivals of dormant franchises from Sega. One, how does this first entry in that initiative make you feel about future revivals that Sega has planned?
It gives me a lot more confidence than I had even maybe a month ago. I'd say I love a lot of those series. Jet Set Radio in particular is one of my favorite games of all time, and I'd love to see that come back. And I think what's really impressive about Shinobi is that it's not just kind of an effort to like cash in on the nostalgia of the series, right? It does a lot to really meaningfully evolve Shinobi, but also kind of push forward the idea of 2D platformers and Metroidvanias in some interesting ways too. And I think that's a very good precedent to set. And if the future games can do even a fraction of what Shinobi does, I think we'll be in a good place, honestly.
Yeah, and it's interesting that they chose Shinobi to be first, because in talking with one of the producers on the Sega side, he was also heavily involved with the Sega Ages initiative, which was them kind of re-releasing a lot of their games in like enhanced form. And Shinobi wasn't the first to release in that, but he told me that it was the first one that they started working on. So it's almost like it has this history of
Interesting.
like leading these initiatives that come to like retro games.
Hmm.
So it's just a little interesting kind of, you know, coincidence there, if nothing else. But you said Jet Set Radio, one of your favorite games of all time. Is that the one you're
Hmm.
most excited for out of this like kind of like revival thing?
I would say so, yeah. I'm interested. I mean, I'm very interested to see what like a modern Crazy Taxi game looks like as
Yeah.
well.
When I
But
was
Jet Set Radio is just so special.
when I was in Tokyo for the Ninja Gaiden 4 cover story about a month ago, I had a very rough day. I was stranded in Kamakura because the tsunami warning that was
I
happening at the
remember that.
time.
Yeah, that's when
Fun
Wesley and I was
times.
in China. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, you were out there with Game Informer's own Wesley LeBlanc.
Hmm.
Um, and I was stranded in Kamakura, and you know, stuck there. The trains were all stopped, and I remember I came back to Tokyo finally after like 13 hours in Kamakura, and I was like, I'm just gonna go to bed. And I was like, you know what? No, I'm gonna go out. The night is young. It was like I think like 8:30, and I'm like, I need some food, so I'm gonna go treat myself to some like really good sushi. And I was in Akihabara, which is where I was staying, but also that's where I got some sushi. And I was walking back to my hotel, and I'm like, I've got quite a decent amount of yen in cash. I am going to walk up and I'm going to spend like a lot of pocket change on this arcade. And one of the games that I played multiple times, I did multiple runs of Crazy Taxi, and it's like a stand-up cabinet. So it was like,
Oh, that's cool.
I've never experienced it that way. I've played like
Yeah,
the
I haven't
sit-down
either.
cabinet, but like, yeah, it was so cool to be able to play Crazy Taxi in a Tokyo arcade.
Yeah,
We
that's
don't really
very
get
cool.
many opportunities like that here in the States unless you happen to find one in Dave and Buster's or something.
There's not a lot of arcades left, like unless you, like you said, go to Dave and Buster's. That's like the only one.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a decent amount of arcade bars, at least in Minnesota there
Yeah,
are.
yeah.
That's kind of like your other option there. But Hayes, where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, you find me at Blue Sky, at Solfleet, SOL Fleet, or at inverse.com. Or if you're going to PAX West this weekend, I will be hosting a panel with Naoki Yoshida and Hiroshi Minagawa. So check into that too.
Oh yeah, just no big deal there. Just, the legends that are them. So like, yeah, great job there. I forgot you were hosting that panel. I was just
Yeah,
gonna plug
I
like,
have to drop it where I can.
yeah, I mean that's a good names to drop there. But you can also read Hayes's review of Shinobi Art of Vengeance, which he gave a 9 out of 10. I gave it a 9.25. You gave it a 9, so we're on similar wavelengths here.
Mm-hmm.
Over on inverse.com. And as I mentioned, check out, if you're at PAX West, check out Hayes's panel with legends in the game right there. Goodness gracious. Naoki Yoshida, and who else was the second one?
Hiroshi Minagawa, the
Oh.
art director of Tactics and 12 and a lot of things.
Yeah, and I mean, you've interviewed Hironobu Sakaguchi, so like you're Mr. Final Fantasy at this point.
I don't know how I got there, but I did.
That is one of like my bucket list interviews that I haven't gotten in my career yet. We've been doing this similar amount of time, Hayes. I've been in it just over 17 years at this point. I think you've been in it like 16,
About
17. Yeah. Yeah, we talked about that. We were at an event. Was it Elden Ring that we were at an event?
Might have
together?
been Elden Ring, yeah.
Yeah, we were.
We've been to a
discussing
lot
that.
of events together.
Yeah,
Surprisingly.
yeah. That was it. It was the one in Las Vegas that we were talking about. That it was the Night Rain event. But yeah, man, it's great to chat with you always, and I'm sure I'll see you at an event soon. Have a blast at PAX West. And speaking of names that we're going to drop, Hayes is going to, depart the podcast now. And when we come back, we will be joined by Tee Lopes, who is the composer of Shinobi Art of Vengeance, and also the theme song that you hear at the start of every episode of All Things Nintendo. We will be right back. We are back for the final time this episode, and I am now joined by a very special guest. This is one of my favorite current composers in the video game industry, and he also happens to be the guy who makes the song that you hear at the start of every episode of All Things Nintendo. It is the one and only Tee Lopes. Tee, how are you doing?
Hello. How are you? Great to be here.
I'm doing great, man. Like I'm so happy that you're able to join the show again. This, I think, your third time appearing on this podcast.
So, yeah. In the course of the past few years, 4 or 5 years. Yeah.
So
great to be back.
I think I had you on originally just to talk about like your career, framed through like, you were, a few years removed from Sonic Mania at that point. Maybe you were talking about TMNT.
It might have been, yeah. Because Sonic Mania is now 8 years old. Time flies, man. It's insane.
We were talking about Sonic Mania last episode because Christian just shared the prototype image for what would have been kind of the successor to Sonic Mania had Evening Star continued working on it. And it looked cool. I mean, ultimately, Sonic Team went with Sonic Superstars, but which I quite like the look of that as well. But it would have been a cool kind of evolution from that sprite-based Sonic Mania into the whatever that ended up being called internally. I don't think he shared what the prototype was called.
Yeah,
but
man, Evening Star, they're just amazing. Anything they touch, they just have this special taste, and the choices they make are always outrageous and amazing, and it's just, so I'm sure it would have been a great title like anything they make, really.
Yeah, and so I think that a lot of people were made aware of you through Sonic Mania, which, Sega joint. You worked on the Streets of Rage 4 DLC, which again, Sega involvement there. There was a licensed Sega property.
True, yeah.
But like, this is kind of the the convergence of those things, because Sega is not only publishing but also co-developing Shinobi Art of Vengeance, and then the Streets of Rage 4 developer Lizard Cube
Yeah.
is the other developer for Shinobi Art of Vengeance. So like, how did these relationships kind of lead to you getting this gig for Shinobi?
It's funny because it's I don't know. I sometimes it feels like it's what's the word I'm looking for? I'm looking for a very specific word. I can't find it.
Serendipitous?
Exactly. Yes. Thank you so much. I could think of the word. I didn't know how to pronounce it. Portuguese is still my first language, believe it or not, after all this time. So, yeah, because I met Ben Fiquet, who is the CEO of Lizard Cube and also the art director for Shinobi Art of Vengeance, through Streets of Rage 4's DLC, right? We worked together and it was such a cool experience that after that was done, he asked me if I would like to join him on a new project. And when he told me what it was, I lost my mind right there and then, and immediately said yes and started working on it. But yeah, man, it's like everything is connected in some strange way, or you could just call it networking, I guess. But I don't know. I prefer the ethereal route explanation, if you want.
Yeah, and I have to say, your work on Shinobi Art of Vengeance, now that I've played through it from start to finish, it's one of those games where, you could very easily say, like a game like this, not specifically Shinobi Art of Vengeance, an action, like precision platformer, if the soundtrack wasn't good, it could be something where you're like, I'm going to put this on and turn on a podcast on in the background and just play it at low volume and listen to something else while I play this game. I've done that with games before.
Yeah, that's also acceptable to me.
But
not ideal, but
never once in my playthrough of Shinobi Art of Vengeance did I have that urge at all. And I think a lot of things are to thank for that. There's it's just kind of like a sensory again, a convergence. Like the art style that Ben does is it makes it one of the most beautiful games I've ever played.
Right. And it's so
And
unique too. Like you can recognize his style right away.
It's incredible.
Which is something important for an artist.
It really is. But your style also shines through in like undeniable ways.
Oh, thank you.
And it complements the art style so well that like it makes it just like this perfect storm that, like, yes, your soundtrack stands alone. Like you could listen to that outside of the game and be like, this is just one bop after another.
Oh, thank you.
And then you could look at a still from Art of Vengeance and be like, yeah, that's a beautiful piece of game art that you could hang on the wall. But together, I think, and when you combine it with like how good the gameplay is, it really adds up to something that's greater than the sum of its parts. And it really coalesces into something that that looks special, it plays special, and it sounds special.
And I'm glad we were able to create that synergy that you're talking about. I definitely think we have something special, and especially having been joined by Yuzo Koshiro, which I'm sure you're going to want to touch on that very soon. But it was a different experience for sure, and very special experience. And since they kind of gave me free reign to do what I wanted with the music, that was very important for me as an artist, right? Because as someone who's been working on revivals and that kind of stuff, sometimes it puts you kind of inside of a box as a musician, because that's what's expected of the game. That's the sound aesthetic that's expected of that particular IP, and it's something that many times you have to follow. So the fact that there was an opportunity to create something completely new and like with experimental stuff was definitely a plus for my career as well, because it allowed me to show to flex some of my other creative muscles that it doesn't just consist of following somebody else's style and trying to imitate that style. No, putting something new on the table, creatively speaking, that was very, very important for me. And I'm sure Yuzo Koshiro enjoyed it too, right? Because he did his thing too. He really got out there and like really outside of what you would probably usually hear from him.
Yeah, and we'll talk about Yuzo Koshiro in just a second here because
Right.
I'm very curious to hear about like how that came to be and your collaboration and everything. But with like something that you touched on, where like a lot of your soundtracks have been in these long established franchises, like, you know, like I said, Sonic Mania,
Right.
TMNT, Contra, Metal Slug. Like there has to be some sort of like kind of like leash that you have to be kept on to an extent, especially since, you
Yeah.
know, Sonic Mania, it was a lot of like you're remixing or covering a lot of classic songs, because like it was like what 60/40, like classic stage revisiting
Something like
versus like
that.
all new stages, and then you
Something
get
like
to
that.
really flex your muscles with something like Studiopolis, which, you know, I think has quickly become a fan favorite. I know when I asked Ben Schwartz
Yeah.
for the Sonic 2 media junket. I asked him like what level he would like to see like recreated in the Sonic movies. He specifically shouted out Studiopolis.
No way.
Yeah,
Now see,
he's a big fan of Sonic
that's new to
Mania.
me. I didn't know. I gotta meet the guy one day. Just play some
Yeah,
Sonic Mania. Yeah, that's
you
crazy.
should play some Sonic Mania with the live action Sonic himself.
Wouldn't that be crazy? Yeah, absolutely.
But so I guess like Shinobi is kind of in a weird camp because like you don't have to, you're not covering songs in most
Nope,
aspects,
no.
but you are like, it is a long established franchise, but not in the sense of Sonic where it's like people still like kind of have like a modern viewpoint of Sonic. It's a long
Right.
dormant franchise, so you could kind of take it and make it your own, I would imagine.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, not specifically for that reason, right? It's just that the developers were coming up with something completely new, although it was, following an existing story and an existing concept. They completely they transformed the game completely, right? Outside of some of the mechanics that we're familiar with and that people wanted to see in the Shinobi game. They added so much and so much new stuff and a new art style for the game that had never been done before, that I wanted to follow the same course. Right, it's not a 16-bit game. It's so I'm not looking for that aesthetic. It's not strictly an action game. There's lots of platforming. There was always a lot of platforming in Shinobi games, but here that's elevated to to n, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's really insane. And also there's new mechanics that were added. There's the exploration, which is a big thing in this game too. So all of those factors informed this new style, or this new type of music, this new experimental music that we brought to the game. This mix of old and new. But I wouldn't say that there was, and going back to this, to what I said before, I don't think that there was a concern to try and bring back the past, and in that way. There was a concern to do something fresh, something new, and that enhanced the experience, right? Not so much pandering to nostalgia like that, but enhancing the game that's in front of you right now, and bring it to life, kind of thing. I think that was the main thing that I had in mind.
And I've always been curious about this because like the music fits the action so well. I mean, and that's been true for all of your soundtracks that you've done, whether it's Sonic Mania or Shredder's Revenge or Metal Slug Tactics.
Thank
Like
you.
it all fits so perfectly. And I'm curious for something like TMNT. You're probably like, okay, well, I'm going to make something approximating what we got with like Turtles in Time, but make it my own. But for something like Shinobi Art of Vengeance, where it's like you are able to kind of go off in your own directions in a lot of cases,
Hmm.
at what point do you kind of like come into the development cycle and show like you get shown like some sort of concept of like what this game is going to be? Do you get to
Hmm.
see like gameplay? Because for something like TMNT or something like Shinobi, it's very rhythmic in the way that you play through these games,
Right.
so you probably have to kind of match that rhythm to an extent with the way that you approach the soundtrack.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, it does follow the soundtrack does follow the pace of the game. Usually it's something that I pay attention to, the pace of the game, the colors on the screen, right? Because colors, they make you feel different things, so I try to paint with music, if that makes any sense. for lack of a better, more technical expression. I didn't go to school for music, so there's lots of stuff that I'm sure we'll understand each other. Um, but yeah, what was I saying?
Talking about like the process and what part of like the process you come in and like
Oh,
what you
right,
get
right.
shown in order to really match like
That's
the
true.
direction you
Yeah.
want to take.
So I get to see a lot of gameplay, or I get to try some of the early builds, and just looking at the action and trying to feel what would go uh, well with that. With all of that information I'm absorbing with my eyes, right? And most of the time, it just starts. This song just starts playing in my head while I'm playing, with just the sound effects, because that's also important, believe it or not. Always ask that when I ask for a video reference, right? In case I'm not playing the game myself, I always ask for it without music, but with the sound effects on,
Mm.
because for some reason that really helps put me in that universe and create something that belongs there, musically speaking. You know what I mean? That kind of brings that whole experience alive.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people call a gift.
Well, yeah, yeah. If I have one, that would be it. That's the one.
Yeah, I mean it again, it shines through in a lot of the work that you do. I mean, we
Thank you.
referenced them earlier, Evening Star, the studio that was formed out of the group of folks that worked on Sonic Mania. Was it last year? It was yeah, last year. It put out Penny's Big Breakaway,
Hmm.
and you provided the soundtrack for that as well.
Yeah,
Lead composer on Penny's Big Breakaway, and again, a completely different approach to the music of a game that
completely different. Yeah.
fits just fantastically with everything that's happening on screen.
Yeah, but I can't take credit for all of that, because Christian Whitehead had a lot of influence in the overall style of the music. So he knew from the get go, more or less, where he wanted to take the soundtrack, aesthetically speaking, right? The kind of sounds that we pick and utilize. And he had that already, that aesthetic in mind. And we had a talk about that. And he told me about his ideas and stuff. And then obviously me and Sean and him and Hunter, we brought that to life. So, but I cannot take credit for coming up with that musical universe. I expanded it for sure, but that was not initially my idea. That was his. That's
And
a talented guy, right?
I mean that entire team is talented. Like I could do an entire podcast with you just digging into the talent that emerged out of like that Sonic fan game
Forget
scene,
about
and
it. Yeah,
that emerged into Mania, and now Evening Star as
we'd
like
never leave here. Never
it's we
leave it.
would be here for
Yeah.
a long time. But like I've had conversations with a lot of those folks, Hunter, Christian, all incredibly intelligent
Hmm.
guys,
Yeah.
all really great guys from what I can tell. Like it just seems. I mean, you might be able to see like over my shoulder here. I
Yeah.
don't know if
Yeah.
the video.
Yeah. I
I
see it.
have it's a Sonic
The
Mania
reversed. Yeah.
poster signed by the entire team.
Oh, okay. Did I
Yeah.
sign it or not?
I have looked for your signature. I need you to send me a reference over Discord
For
so I can
sure.
compare, because I don't know what your
Uh,
signature looks
okay.
like.
Oh, okay, okay. Now it's pretty obvious, but if I didn't, I hope we can finally meet in person one day, and so
It's so wild. We've been talking over the internet for over
uh,
half a decade at this point.
yeah, right, which is insane if you really think about it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, I'm hoping that and this is a tangent. I know
yeah,
that you did a DJ set at MagFest last year.
that's true. Yeah, that was incredible.
I grew up in Maryland, and so I used to go to MagFest before I joined Game Informer. It's a
Wow.
fantastic. It's called Music and Gaming Festival for those who
Right.
are unfamiliar. It happens like just outside of Washington D.C. every single January, and I'm actually planning on going this coming January.
You should,
So
man. Everyone should go.
I'm holding out hope that they're going to have you back for another DJ set, but they
Oh,
have
me
not
too.
announced the lineup yet.
No, me
But
too. But it's up in the air now. Maybe they'll decide to call me to do something. But regardless, I should be going. And if you do go, it's gonna be great to get together.
we'll have to finally sit down, and we'll have to discuss the next collaboration that we're
Yeah.
going to do, because as I mentioned, you provided the soundtrack for the All Things Nintendo podcast. This is a
Right.
like I gave you like we had like a brief discussion when I came to you and I was like, hey, I'm taking all things Nintendo independent. Want to get away from this kind of royalty free but unable to be like monetized music that I've been using, just kind of stock music.
Right.
I wanted to get something that was like, you know, purely all things Nintendo. And we had a very brief discussion over Discord. I was actually I was on a trip for Topspin Tennis at the time, and I'm in my hotel room
Spin.
messaging you, telling you this stuff, and I remember you being like, "Okay, I'll take this," and then like I was like, "All right, well he didn't need any more direction than that," and then you delivered the thing that was exactly what I was looking for,
Wow.
and I was like, "How did he do that?" And I remember like listening to it and like being like, "All right, let's." And there's always like I have my. This is not to say I don't have full faith in you as a composer, but when you're
Hey,
like thinking of like, all right, a theme song for your show, it has to be just right. And I had a thing in my head of like what I wanted it to be, and somehow you hit it pitch perfect,
that's nuts.
and you brought me a thing as soon as I started playing it, and like you know the intro and like the beat kind of drops. A big smile came across my face, and I'm like, "This
That's
is
awesome,
perfect."
man. See, you can only hope that the people you make music for, be it your friends or clients, reacts this way. But to make something like that, like you have this, everybody has a certain energy about them, right? And you have your own energy. And it's just a matter of trying to read that and somehow translating it into music. And that's what I tried to do here, right? It was not so much the Nintendo thing. It was more like your energy and your cheerfulness, and just just the way you portray yourself can be translated into music, as it can be translated into any art, really, right?
Wow.
But in this case, I think that's what informed the, and in video games it's the same thing. Has a lot to do with energy, the energy of colors, the energy of movement, and that's what.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the famous thing about like the Sonic music is that it's amazing for like studying and working out and doing like writing because it's meant to propel you forward. Like the classic Sonic tunes back on the Genesis, and then you know eventually your soundtrack with Mania. It is so perfect for just putting on in the background when you have work to do because it is designed specifically to push you forward and make you go
Yeah.
fast.
And have you noticed how a lot of the tracks for the stages where you're supposed to go slower, like water stages, or like they have a slower song most of the
Yeah,
time, or many times. So
yeah.
that's
Hydro
that.
City.
Yeah, for example, right? So that's the flow I'm talking about when I talk about pacing and how music enhances that. I That's what I was referring to. That's a
That's
great example.
that's great insight. Let's circle back to Shinobi real quick because
Yeah, yeah.
Yuzo Koshiro, legendary composer,
Legend.
you got to work together on Shinobi Art of Vengeance.
We got to work on the same soundtrack. Yes. Unfortunately, we didn't get to mix our skills to make one song together. You know what I mean? Because
Mhm.
uh, he's obviously super busy with his stuff with Earthyon, all of this stuff he's involved in. And me, obviously, I have all these projects going on. And we live in very different parts of the world, as you know, right? I'm in New Jersey, he's in Japan. So it was just tough to coordinate to the point of making one or more songs together. But just having him contribute songs to my soundtrack is surreal anyway, right?
Yeah.
I wish we could have gotten together like in the same studio and just like exchange ideas like that, but unfortunately that wasn't possible. We did get to listen to each other's stuff during production though, and get some cues off of each other, and that was very interesting, right? And
Hmm.
insane if I really think about it, but yeah, it was a crazy experience. Really, really
But that
cool.
you also like having somebody involved with the project that was involved with the like the early Shinobi games. That is,
Surreal.
oh my gosh, like I can't
And
even imagine.
you have to remember, this is one of the first of all, he was the first composer I knew by name, video game composer or otherwise, probably.
Wow.
Yeah, because title screen, of the games I was playing when I was a kid. Music by Yuzo Koshiro, right? So that was bam right there. I know the name of the person that made this music, and I'm now a fan of this person. And I've been a fan of him since I was very little, man. So I usually say this: if I could go back in time and tell kid Tee Lopes that he would one day collaborate with Yuzo Koshiro or be on the same soundtrack, I'm not sure I'd be here to tell this story right now. I probably would have had a heart attack or something, because it's it's a dream come true, right? Career wise, it's a very high height in my point of view, the way I feel about it.
I mean,
Special event.
those are such incredible moments. Like, you know,
Yeah,
I've had the opportunity to sit down with several people that like I grew up watching their names and credits as well.
you
Like,
know the feeling. Yeah.
I mean, our mutual, I guess not. I guess you worked with him on the publisher side, but I've interviewed him probably 10 times at this point. But Takashi Iizuka, like
Yeah, yeah.
Sonic 3 and Knuckles is forever going to be one of my favorite games of all time. And, you know, he was like lead designer on that game
Sure.
and directed it in some cases.
When we were just little kids.
Yeah. So being able to like sit down with him for, you know, probably close to 15 hours at this point over the course of my
Yeah,
career,
man. Wow.
like those are like the pinch me moments. Or like, you know, being able to interview Shigeru Miyamoto and Koji Kondo together. That was like a pinch me moment for me a couple years
For
ago.
sure.
And so I'm this kind of segues into something I wanted to ask you, because you've worked with all these established brands, you've worked with all these incredible composers. I'm assuming you've when you were working on Sonic Superstars, that was kind of like a collaborative soundtrack,
With
from what
June.
I understand. Yeah,
Yeah.
Jun Senue, incredible work that he's done over his career as well.
Oh yeah, we've worked together a few times already. June, I love
Yeah.
collaborating with him. He also gives me lots of free reign, right? Many times
Mhm.
I'll arrange his stuff that he composed, and he doesn't give me lots of directions, right? He just gives it to me and just trusts me with it, which I'm really, really thankful for. And it's just a lot of fun, right?
Hey,
Because this is stuff I used to do for free. Remember, right? Before I became a composer officially, I was on YouTube doing arrangements of songs just for fun, or you know, and for Sonic fans like me and stuff. And to to have this come true in a professional way is, you know, also pretty insane if you think about it.
yeah,
So
it's
I'm a lucky man.
I mean, I feel the same way about, like, you know, I grew up reading gaming magazines, and including
Right.
Game Informer, and now, you know, here I am,
Yeah. Now,
still
question
at
for
Game
you.
Informer.
Question for
Yo,
you.
okay.
When you were speaking to these people, these big video game legends, do you forget after a few minutes that you're speaking to a legend, and does it kick in that you're just talking to a person at any point,
Oh
and you get
man,
really comfortable, or is there always uh, that
for
fanboyism, if for lack of a better term?
there's always going to be a little bit of that, but like it you have to kind of put it down somewhere deep. Like, you know, I walk in and I see Shigeru Miyamoto and Koji Kondo staring at me from across the couch. There's always going to be something where it's like I'm asking the man who created Mario about Mario. And
Yeah, man.
it's like there's always going to be something like that, where it's like you look up and like after you, like, you know, you say your question, you look into the eyes of the guy and you're just like, holy crap, he is like
Exactly.
3 feet away from me.
Yeah, that's
But
the
you have
man.
to, you,
He's that's the person right there.
yeah, you have to keep it together though, you know,
Yep,
like
absolutely. Yeah.
but like that what I was getting at with my question for you was that, like, is there an IP or a composer that you would love to collaborate with? Like, Yuzo Koshiro, first name you remember seeing in video game credits, first composer you knew, that was obviously a dream come true for you. Is there somebody else that sticks out? They're like, oh man, it'd be so cool to collaborate with Nobuo Uematsu, for example,
Oh
or something like that.
man, that would be insane. Can you imagine? That's another one of my favorite composers out
Yeah.
there. Yeah, man. But there's so many names. I also had the pleasure of collaborating with some of my other favorite musicians. Like June was a big one. Harumi Fujita from Tombi or Tomba. which was one of my favorite games when I was a kid. I was lucky enough to be able to do more than one track with her now. A couple of tracks for different projects now, actually. And then there was all of those amazing composers that, I didn't directly collaborate with, but I was on the same soundtrack as. That's all really incredible stuff. Now, who would I like to collaborate with?
Pie in the sky. You have a genie, and it says you can choose one composer to collaborate with.
I don't know, man. That's a very tough question. Yuzo Koshiro was number one.
Well,
for obvious reasons. So yeah, we checked that off the list. So now I have to sit down and really think about about a new idol I want to collaborate with. But no, I'd love to do a Mega Man game, man.
Oh, you doing a Mega Man soundtrack would be incredible.
That would be, I think, so much fun and probably so natural for me for some reason. I think that my vanilla style, right, when I'm not trying to get into different stuff, my less experimental, more natural style is very Mega Man-ish in terms of melodies and chord choices and all that stuff. I think it would come naturally to me. That's a project I would love to tackle, and Castlevania is another one, right? But I always talk about these two. I always talk about these two, I feel.
I will say that when I heard, it's interesting when you were talking about making the All Things Nintendo theme song, you had mentioned you didn't really think Nintendo, you were going off of my energy and the show's energy. But the first thing I thought of when I heard that soundtrack or the song that you composed was Tee Lopes needs to make a Mario Kart soundtrack.
Mario Kart. Oh man, that would be a funky one. That would be really cool. I don't know that that's ever going to happen, though.
Yeah, Nintendo is very internal with all their stuff.
Because of the circumstances, but man, would that be amazing? I would love to.
Yeah, well, that was the first thing that came up to me was giving you a Mario Kart soundtrack would be yep, that's all I need.
Not even the entire thing, just a track or two.
Just a couple tracks, yeah,
that would be amazing.
But yeah, Castlevania. I mean, I think that was one of the first soundtracks that I remember hearing as a kid and being like, "Oh, this is
NES?
Distinctive and it has identity to it." And I would be whistling the song Vampire Killer, right?
Vampire Killer, yeah.
I would be whistling that.
You're talking NES?
Yeah,
the first one. Okay, wow. You got that game when it came out?
I didn't get it, but my cousins had it, and I would go over to their house and play it. And that was Mario, obviously you knew do, but hearing Vampire Killer with Castlevania on NES, it was oh man, this is an earworm that sticks with me long after I walk away from the NES. Contra, obviously great.
Contra, yeah.
All those Konami games,
Konami
honestly,
was insane in the 80s and 90s.
A lot of people dunk on the first NES TMNT game, but that soundtrack is god tier.
Yeah, the soundtrack, I'm not too familiar with that one, believe it or not. I know a couple of songs. It's not something I played as a kid, but that's that TMNT is Ultra Games, right? Which was Konami's localization outside of the Japan.
Yeah, it was how they could get around the publishing restrictions.
Right. So I don't know who was composing those songs though. Was it still the Japanese?
Let's see.
Was it still being? I'm not sure. But yeah, man, you were asking me about somebody I would love to collaborate with, and it just came to my mind. Obviously, Michiru Yamane, the composer of Symphony of the Night, which is
sorry.
yeah, no problem.
I'm sorry, I'm looking up the TMNT NES game, and it doesn't have a composer listed.
No, that's unfair.
Oh wait, former Konami composer Hidenori Maezawa.
Hidenori Maezawa. Yeah, I'm not familiar with it. He's not active anymore, probably, right?
Yeah.
Former composer.
Yeah, it said former composer and sound designer. It looks like
man, there's a few great composers from the 80s and 90s that are just not active anymore.
Yeah,
which is
unfortunate.
Insane. Yeah, and some of them compose classics, right? Like the composer for Mega Man 2.
Mm-hmm.
He's not active anymore. Hasn't been since for a long time.
Just so wild because you think about that. That's foundational reading. If you're like video game soundtracks, like what are like the most influential video game soundtracks of all time? And like Mega Man 2 is up there.
Right. Yeah, but
Like you,
he's not
you
even
still
active,
go,
no?
you go to places like Magfest. There is a band probably 24 hours a day somewhere on one of those stages playing a song from Mega Man 2.
Oh yeah, man, absolutely.
The
That
metal
you know.
covers.
Oh yeah, that's ever present. That song is never gonna go away. It's one of the biggest classics. But yeah, unfortunately, he's not active anymore, and for a long time now. I actually got to
Yeah.
collaborate with him
What?
afterwards. Yeah,
You're
we
just
got
you're,
to
you're
go.
burying the lead here.
No, it's pretty insane. But we got in touch with him, right? Takashi Tateishi is his name. Um, and I was working, still am, but I was working more actively with the Brave Wave at the time.
Mhm.
And Mohammed, who is the head of the label, he's a very, very, very big Mega Man 2 fan, right? So he was in touch with the Tateishi-san and was trying to convince him so bad to come up with a new song because he hadn't composed anything in decades, right?
We need your genius.
And it was just one song, right, for this album, this concept album that he created. And he didn't want to. He was so hesitant about it. But I guess after insisting so much, he finally got onto the boat and composed something. And I had the pleasure of arranging that song, right?
Yeah.
Me and Harumi Fujita. So there was that
Wow.
trio of, in one song, which was really, really cool. And Johnny Atma was on the guitar for that, by the way.
That's got to
It was
be
great.
another pinch me moment.
Oh yeah, that was a while ago. It was a few years ago already, and it was something I couldn't talk about for a long time because the song wasn't out yet, and it wasn't out for a few years. But now I can talk about it, and it was one of those moments for sure.
Where's that song for people
The
who want to hear
song,
that?
yeah, the song is called Ultramarine, and it's from the album Giants.
I'm assuming it's
was
all on the
published-
streaming services and everything.
Yeah, Ultramarine. Look it up.
Ultramarine.
Yeah,
I will check that out after this call. Honestly,
Yeah,
like that's
and
the first
then-
thing I'm doing after this call.
and then yeah, it has like a really, really cool sax solo and everything, and lots of references to Mega Man 2 music, which was something more requested. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll find ways to sneak some stuff in there. Let's see if you pick up on that. But it's great stuff.
Well, I will have to check that out. Before we wrap up here, I did want to. I had lunch with a mutual friend when I was out in Tokyo last month, and that is a fellow game composer, Dale North.
Oh, Dale, what a great composer!
Yeah,
Super
he's
talented
fantastic.
dude. Yeah.
Yeah, he we talked about you because I was like, hey, like these are like Dale and you are like two of my favorite current working composers in the games industry.
Yeah, man, he's fantastic. He's one of the top guys for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was just a fun thing, and so I got to hang out with Dale for a day in Akihabara, so that was super fun.
Oh,
and then
I'm jealous.
hopefully I'll see you in Washington D.C. in a few months here.
Oh
And,
yeah, man. I sure hope so. I sure hope so.
Yeah.
You're gonna love it. It's keeps expanding and getting better and better acts. Like really cool stuff. I had a blast. I hope to see you there.
Yeah, I got to go to one of the first Magfests I went to. Nobuo Uematsu was performing with the
Wow.
Earthbound Papas. And
Wow.
that was like a once in a lifetime situation. I just like randomly ran into him in the courtyard, and I was like, he was like on his way to a signing, and I just happened to be out in the courtyard, like in between, like where the Gaylord Hotel where it's held.
Yeah.
There's like a little courtyard, like by like one of like the main stages.
Yep.
And I guess his band was out there doing a photo shoot, and like they weren't letting anybody else in because like people would storm him.
Right.
But I was already out there when they came out. So I
Right.
just got to watch them do this photo shoot while security watched all the doors, and then like just randomly got to say hi to him. And I was like, this is so cool. And this was before I was at Game Informer. This was like 2009, 2010 maybe.
Oh yeah, that was a while ago. And now I missed it. I wasn't going to that convention at the time. I wasn't doing much with the video game industry at the time yet, but yeah, man.
Yeah, I was fresh faced in the industry at that point.
Absolutely, man. You got lucky. I don't know when we'll get to see something like that again. So
yeah,
that's really cool.
and I wasn't even going to go. A friend who was like clued into it was like, you need to come this year because this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. He doesn't perform in the US very often.
Right.
and they got him. And like,
Yeah.
I'm a diehard Final Fantasy fan, so like to have, especially Final Fantasy X, I think that is one of my favorite soundtracks of all time.
Oh, yeah.
I can listen to that and get
Me too,
goosebumps.
man. To
And
Xanarkand is
oh
incredible, right?
yes, one of the greatest songs I think in general, not just in gaming.
I used to get tear-eyed at the ending
Oh yeah,
when he puts his you say Titus or Titus?
I always said Titus, but
Titus, me too, right?
I've course corrected to say Titus just
Right.
because
That's
I
how
don't
it
want
is.
people to be like, actually,
Yeah. Oh, that's the official. It's Titus. All right.
it is Titus.
So when Titus
officially.
wraps his arms around what's her name?
Yuna.
Yuna, and then he kind of just just vanishes.
Yeah.
The music during that scene is so incredibly touching. When that trumpet comes in, I still remember it. See, I remember it's playing. It's replaying inside of my head right now. It's so touching, man, and it's definitely one of my favorite. It's Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy VI are my two favorite Final Fantasy soundtracks.
And what's your favorite soundtrack overall? Favorite game soundtrack?
Symphony of the Night.
Okay.
Castlevania. Yeah.
You had that ready.
I was telling you about this before you were looking up when you were looking up the TMNT composer. So sorry for making you multitask.
No
like
worries.
That. So yeah, she Michiru Yamane would be somebody I would love to collaborate with. Musically speaking, she is just incredible, and Symphony of the Night is such an eclectic soundtrack, man. Just has a little bit of everything, and definitely one of my inspirations for and one of the reasons I try to be eclectic with my music too, to do a little bit of everything and explore a little bit of everything. It's just such a complete soundtrack and so enjoyable, right? Doesn't have one bad song.
It is incredible.
Yeah,
it's one of the just one of the most perfect games, honestly.
Yeah,
like establishing the Metroidvania aspect of it, and also the action is so perfect, the platforming, it almost, I guess it's a perfect circle back to Shinobi Art of Vengeance, because I think Shinobi Art of Vengeance is much in that way as well, where it's like all these disparate elements come together to create something really special,
right?
And I think Castlevania Symphony of the Night is a perfect example of that. Speaking of Castlevania composers, it was one of the coolest moments I had was in 2013 at MagFest. Kinuyo Yamashita
Yamashita, yeah.
She was at MagFest and did they did like Bit Brigade. That's the band I was thinking of.
Bit Brigade, yeah, okay, I'm familiar.
So they basically have a guy up there speed running, and then they have a band behind him playing the soundtrack. Like it's like a rock show.
Oh.
But so you haven't heard of these guys?
No. Well, I have heard of the name, but I never caught their act. I didn't know.
So basically there's a speedrunner. That's his job in the band. And he has like a tube TV in the front, and then they have it projecting up on the screen behind him. Uh-huh. And then there is a rock band that comes out and plays the soundtrack live for whatever game he's playing. And so I've seen like The Legend of Zelda. I saw the original Castlevania, and Kinuyo Yamashita was actually in attendance when they were performing original Castlevania and playing her music up on stage.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And she's off on the side just watching and smiling as they're doing this. And it was such a cool experience to see that.
Oh, for sure, man. Wow. No, I definitely missed out on a lot of stuff throughout the years, right? I've been to the event 3 times now, and every time there's just so much going on that it's hard to catch everything, and sometimes you get distracted and you miss the really good stuff. And in my case, I had to perform and I had to do all this stuff, so I definitely missed some great acts this year. But it's still great to see everybody and to just get to relax for a little bit and not worry about work and just enjoy music and games and the stuff I'm so fond of.
Well, if we both end up at MagFest this year, you'll have one more thing to do, and that is grab coffee or grab lunch with me.
Rob me away, and let's do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. T, thank you so much for joining me for this episode. This has been great. It's awesome. It's always great to catch up with you. Man. We do this every couple of years, it seems.
Let's hope we do it more and more often, man. because of more and more releases. Yeah, that would be a good sign.
Hey, well,
but
I'm
yeah,
sure
man.
you have more than enough stuff on your plate right now that we'll have plenty to talk about in the coming years.
Fortunately, there's a lot going on, so I'm fortunate. I'm grateful about that. Really happy about that. But yeah, we'll catch up about that soon, hopefully.
Well, thank you so much for joining this
Thank you
episode of All
for
Things
having me.
Nintendo.
And thanks everybody that's for listening. Thank you for your time, and thank you, Brian, once again. Always a pleasure, man.
And thank you so much to everyone for listening. As you know, the Discord and the associated Patreon page are the best ways to get in touch with the show, but you can also reach out to me, Brian at allthingsnintendo.com, or hit me up on Instagram or Blue Sky at Brian P. Shea. And you can also subscribe to the channel on YouTube. T, I see you taking a drink there, but can you tell people where they can find you online and how they can support your work?
So these days you can find me in lots of cool soundtracks that are coming out. Well, lots of cool games. Hopefully you agree the soundtrack is also cool. You could also find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Just look up Tee Lopes. I think I'm the only one in the industry right now, so it's not going to be tough to find me. But
I'm sure
look
it's
me up.
Sonic Mania and Penny's Big Breakaway and
Yeah.
Shinobi in your bio.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, all that good stuff will be there.
That is our show for this week. Thank you again so much for listening. Take care. We'll see you next time. Before we wrap up this episode of All Things Nintendo, I just want to give a special thank you to the $10 patrons of this show. Alex Stadnick, Andy Junkins, Ben Richland, Carbon Mjolnir, Chaps My Ass, Derek Sigmund, Dusty Beeman, Ian T. Clark, Jason Thompson, Jawar Hello, Johnny Five, Jose Villalobos, Joshua DeProy, Casey Radio Man, Cody Gibson, Creeper 207, Paul at Drunk on Mako, Pratable, Rob McCann, Bobby Mac 265, Robert Sosa, Roberto Nieves, Roger Reichart, Russell Sayer, Smithy Poo, Zachary Pliggy, and Zek 3 Sword Sama. Thank you so much for continuing to help me out with this show and allow me to continue putting out episodes week after week.